streak speeds by.
Yes, so I had to go through the Marshall Tower again, and it was my best run, except for this part at the very end, where just happenstance and just the smallest few frame issues just kept ruining me. But whatever. Here is the boss that you fight if you decide to be weird and go to the Marshall Tower a second time. This is Bale.
He looks even more challenging.
What is that? What do you mean?
He looks even more challenging.
Well, we'll have enough time as to get to why that's technically not true. But first I'll have to explain what Bale is. So Bale, of course, the name is based around the Bale of actual mythology.
Okay.
He is a super boss in Disgaea. He's a huge towering ogre who usually is like incredibly feared and just like really hard to beat, and like in lore. And his signature is that he has these swords that he can summon and usually have special properties. However, the problem with Bale is that whenever he is beaten, he has backup bodies in order to regain, just like bide his time and regain his power when he can. And one of his backup bodies, historically, is a Prinny, because it's sort of easy to transfer souls in that medium. So
there's just a lot of powerful Prinnies.
No, not really. I won't say there's a lot. There's more than like you historically think due to special situations. But let's say there are, as far as you know, three standardly powerful Prinnies, and then Etna's Prinnies, which can be as powerful as these in desperation.
Right.
So
I thought you were gonna say something like 20.
no. They're basically just, as far as I know, 3. But yeah, Bale here, he actually, in some instances, he doesn't use a Prinny body, but actually, at one point, I think, used a Irindum's body, which is a mushroom monster in Disgaea, which is another weak monster class. So he seems to just either like doing it, or it's easy to transfer his souls into the weaker monster classes.
I mean, if he survived so long, it clearly works.
Yep. The thing is, though, is that he is easier than Laharl, because even though he is so strong that he takes 4 hit pounds to stun. He's one of the only 2 bosses in this game to do that. But his patterns, I don't know why I just stood there that time, but his patterns are pretty simple to understand, and they involve him staying still a lot. The issue is the attacks themselves, but he doesn't jump around as much. So he's actually easier, but you'll see what he looks like right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's his
gigantic.
That was his true body, but we beat him. And you see that I got an A, but I got an A in terms of time, but the deaths from the last part just like brought it down to a B, meaning that if I actually did carry over as well as I did for the rest, the rest of the Marshall Tower, I would have gotten an S, and I am super mad about that, especially since I didn't get an S last time because I decided to do Laharl the hard way. And the problem is that I think every subsequent visit to the Marshall Tower, you will fight Bale, and not Laharl, because Laharl is a special story thing. So you have to
Okay.
reset the timeline in order to go and fight Laharl again. But that would mean I'd have to go through the Marshall Tower 3 times. So I just had to live with it. But now we are in the land of DLC.
Is this a new background? This looks new.
Yes. This
Good.
is actually the back. If you notice the giant pit, well, maybe it was more prominent in the anime. No, it also showed partially. Yeah, the giant pit here is actually the same giant pit that you see in the background of the hub world. This is because this is the actual castle. This is the normal path to the actual castle that's in the background, Laharl's castle, aka your base in Disgaea 1.
Right.
So
I
now,
like the contrast of the blue and the orange. I think it works really well.
yeah. The thing is that Etna, despite being an overlord, like, stays in an antechamber, which I almost think she does that entirely for the pun of it being called the Etna chamber. Ah, nuts. Oh. But she just stays around in one of the castle adjacent stuff, and like, I think in Prinny 2 she moves back to the castle proper. I think that's correct. So yeah, she's just in her own little place right now. She can go back to the castle whenever she wants. But
In the timeline, like, this takes place between two games, I'm assuming. So what games? Do both games take place between two games, or are they like very far apart?
okay, so this game, due to its mix of stuff, it takes place between Disgaea 1 and Disgaea 2. The second game, however, because Laharl still hasn't reincarnated, and Asagi is how she is. The second game, I believe, also takes place between Disgaea 1 and 2, just much later.
Okay.
I might be missing some details that would change that, but the thing is that is assuming, of course, that the ending that we get is specifically the same, that leads to the others. Because something that this game does, and the more I speak about it, the more I realize this game loves to play around with timelines, is that there is actually a timeline split in the original universe that causes most of this issue. And then you actually have the bad ending stuff in normal Disgaea. So the timeline split actually occurs in the game called Disgaea Infinite, which is a visual novel. And in that visual novel, you play as a Prinny who gains the power to possess people after, and so you can slightly change the decisions they make. And because... What's that?
I was yawning, but I didn't want to yawn on camera, so...
Yeah, because it would have given the wrong impression after all of this. But
Yes.
it was... In that, you could have something that transitions straight into Disgaea 2. Or you could lead into like, oh, this is how they actually went to Disgaea 3. Or this is how they went to the Makai Kingdom timeline. Just that Prinny influences a timeline change to explain the extra dimensional stuff in certain games.
Why does it feel like so much lore is based entirely around stuff Prinnies are doing?
I know, I love the irony. But here is Flan.
Are you sure Master Edna isn't just blaming us for something she did, dude?
Huh. Don't you dare try to pin this on Miss Etna.
of course, Flan is as stupid as she used to be, but there's something in this game that actually is not okay in terms of how they treat her. Because, you know, she was ditzy, kind of stupid in Disgaea 1, and turning into a fallen angel at the end of Disgaea 1 removes her inhibitions. Especially since she doesn't have to actually... She doesn't have anybody in Celestia to report to or feel bad about. So she's a lot more selfish.
Here's the ultimate storytelling rule is that if your character starts out smart, they become a genius, and if your character starts out dumb, they become completely
moronic.
I can't think of it. Yeah, fair enough.
Here's the thing.
And that seems to always be the case.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I haven't played Disgaea Dimension 2, so I don't know how much they corrected that. But in this case, they don't go too bad with Flan usually, in her later appearances. So it's not the worst, but I say that here is the worst. Because she's also historically kind, and she won't even she would be the person to listen to the Prinnies first. And see, like, at least consider their story without doing all of this. Especially since she's, even as much as her inhibitions are gone, like, she still wouldn't choose fighting over this, like, as quickly as she does here. And there is an explanation as to why, and that explanation is horrible because it also ruins another character. But we're about to get to that. The problem with Flan is that she's incredibly vertical in her movements, and that is a weakness that's in this game that's hard to get around. Especially if you hip pound. She also wastes a lot of time with this. But if you hip pound and an enemy is going up as you do it, unless you specifically do it in a certain way, usually you're going to get hit. So her being on her little pogo stick here is actually pretty hard if you don't quite understand how to get around the movements. And I've done better as you've seen there before, so. She is also very susceptible to commercials.
Anyway, where were you all this time?
I had to ask the Seraph if there was any way that I could help Laharo. But I got lost on the way to Celestia, and before I knew it, I had stumbled into a showroom and bought this limited-time-only hopper.
And there it is.
You're like the poster child of failure, dude. But listen, we've been running all over on a mission for Master Edna. We haven't had time to toss out your stupid DVD. We were set up, dude.
Yeah, Prinny's in the background. Back me up.
It's a Blu-ray. A huge difference.
The sprite does not match the voice for that.
Yeah, that's a he said Campbell moment.
But here, there's this.
Oh, Miss Edna, you are truly the most merciful demon ever.
She's like, she should know better
To you,
at this point.
these are nothing but a
It's especially after Disgaea 1. And she curses under her breath here. And here's the line.
Classes are really paying off.
I'm assuming that's also really bad.
Yes, that's the line that ruins it. Because Etna and Flan are supposed to be actually friends. Sure, Etna is kind of a corrupting influence. She kind of just is. But, like, they're actually friends that respect each other. So for her to say in this game, yes, I subjected her to brainwashing classes so that she will listen to whatever I say. Just like, no! the relationship.
Here we go, dude!
I feel like there's a lot of, and I think I would say part of it is the fans' fault, because there are a lot of lines like where you could argue people take too seriously, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people put throwaway lines into their media without really thinking about the implications.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the fact that, like, they actually correct it a bit in Prinny 2. So clearly there must have been something that they realized, like, yeah, this can't fly for. Where they're more on general speaking terms. Like, Edna is still in charge because she is the Overlord, but like, otherwise, it's still, she like takes Fawn's advice to be nicer and other things. Like, it helps a lot. So I'm at least glad for that. And Fawn gets a much bigger role in Prinny 2. Because, you know, after the whole Flanderization and just like the focus on Etna for this entire story, I really would have appreciated more active and character consistent Fawn. And we'll exactly see how you get that. She's also plays a huge role in the side story of that game.
What are the chances of there being a Prinny 3?
What are the what?
Chances of there being Prinny 3.
Oh. Here's the thing. Unknown. Because I don't have enough data to say whether or not they would or wouldn't. Because there's technically no reason why they wouldn't.
It feels like a Tactics A3 situation. Where it's just like, yeah. But that even feels even more slim to none. I don't know why. Even though I have heard that there's rumors that there's going to be a Tactics remake.
There's no explicit reason as to why there's not a Prinny 3, especially with, like, sure, they probably couldn't reuse the assets like they did before, especially in Prinny 2. But considering, I don't think the Prinny 1 and 2 collection wasn't a success. I might actually have to check the numbers for that a bit later.
I was about to say 2D platformers are in vogue again.
Yeah.
And I guess that's actually been for a while. I was thinking more of 3D platformers. Even that's been a while since that was proven to be something that can exist outside of Mario games.
This part of this stage is brutal. Like, the stage just is like, oh, this is kind of hard, but then this part specifically is really brutal, and it is technically easier to deal with if you can manipulate the enemies enough to get up to the top and get up to the machine. But that is really hard to do. But some backstory about this. This is the world of another Nippon Ichi property, Phantom Brave, where a girl is ostracized from society because she can basically make ghosts inhabit objects and they will regain their form, so they're phantoms. And people kind of fear that and think that they also can't actually see the ghosts in their normal form, so she just looks crazy. But she's a nice girl, and you have to deal with the story of her trying to gain acceptance and everything.
I'm getting a lot of messages. I don't know if that's going to pick up in the recording.
I hope not. There's already so much I have to deal with.
Well, not in this one, at least.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I haven't played enough of Phantom Brave to say too much about it. I just know the first part of it, and it's kind of depressing. And I don't know if they keep that depressing angle for the rest of the game. But
right.
Yeah, these are the islands that where the main character Maruna is. And if if I hip pounded off of that ghost, I could have gotten to the top and skipped this entire bullcrap. But the thing is that Phantom Brave, as well as Phantom Kingdom, or Makai Kingdom, whichever you want, no... You see, it went transparent just at that moment because they know you're going to try again. Jerks!
That's good level design.
So I have to really get it at the... just like as soon as it gets through the wall. But I don't know exactly which point will allow it to respawn. Because respawns are sort of inconsistent in this game. And it respawns. And it's gone. And here I'm really debating like, okay, is this really that bad? I just need to be careful. Because I know they usually will throw another enemy, aka like that ghost over there. And that's the issue. Could have probably made that jump there. I'm being like super cautious now that I think about it. And that's why.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is so close to the end, by the way. This is another, the last stretch is just so incredibly hard. Why did you do this? Also, you have to get rid of those succubi, or else they will do that insane attack. The one thing I'm going to dread in Prinny 2 is that there is a even stronger version of the succubi that have an even more annoying attack. And unlike this one, they are invincible while they do it.
Is Prinny 2 harder than Prinny 1?
DLC notwithstanding, I'd say yeah. There's a lot more. Okay, I just wasn't ready that time. But just like there's a lot more that you have to consider in Prinny 2. Your moveset is also different, and they do change things around that. But it's like there's a lot more specifically in the individual challenge, and you technically. You see how I have 3 hits before I die? In normal mode, you have 2 hits before you die. So it is even generally harder on that scope to begin with.
Yeah.
And the knockback in this section is so annoying. So, at this point, it's one of those things where you're just like, you look back at the choices you've made in life, and you're just like, I was right there the first time. I was right there.
Yeah, honestly, that's the worst feeling when it's just you're right there. That's a big, because I feel that in Mario Maker a lot, where a level can be fantastic, and then 2/3, 3/4 of the way into the level, you die, and you realize there was no checkpoint, and the entire vibe of the level changes. Because it's like, yeah, you're right there, and suddenly this really fun level is now a long and tedious level, because you died right before the end.
Yeah, it's so nuts. And sure, I could have probably made better choices. And okay. And I was just a little late. Just a little late. Those jerks. But see, the ending is right there, but I should have just gunned it. I should have just gunned it. I'd take that one thing because that was so... I felt like screaming at that point. Just... Especially since, like, those enemies, they train you to have to take care of those enemies because they're extremely annoying to deal with. But in this case, that's kind of a trap. Honestly, this stage, even though it's technically the medium between difficulties, this last part notwithstanding, I really will probably not play this on Hell's Finest. Like this last part with how precise you have to be. I feel obviously I can get through it eventually. But man, will it just be the most annoying thing. And I just don't think it's DLC. Like I don't think I need to be like this. Oh wait, I just realized something. I could have used the incubus. By the way, that's secretly an incubus. I could have used the incubus to also jump up there. I just kept killing it too early. Oh man, now I feel like a complete moron. And people say that this boss is actually hard. I'd say she's unconventional, not hard.
So she's a boss from that other video game?
Nope, she's the main character.
Okay. That's what I mean. Like, she's from the other game and not from Prinny.
Yeah.
Penguin? Where do you come from, little guy?
I'm not a penguin, dude! I'm a Prinny!
Oh, okay. Anyway, have you seen Ash around here?
Sorry, Reg, he's a master now. He's on a journey again. Just having fun.
Like, she just breezes past the Prinny thing.
I mean,
There are weird things in this world.
I guess that's true.
I got it from a totally evil demon, dude!
Unfortunately, a lack of communication and her overactive imagination makes her think that Ash's red scarf was taken by the Prinny.
darling Ash, dude!
I love this line reading of completely evil Prinny.
You're a demon! You ate Ash!
Dude? I mean, yeah, I'm a demon, but...
So you admit it! You took Ash away!
Yeah, I figured that it'd have to be a miscommunication. Boss fight.
Yeah, I mean, most of the boss stuff in this game is
I guess that's
miscommunication. Or people just not listening. Or people being incredibly selfish. Kind of par for the course with where you are.
The Prinnies are so powerful, they're defeating a boss in another video game. I mean, a main character in another video game.
Technically, we beat Flan, who is also... I guess he's not... We beat Laharl, I guess, even if he is a Prinny, and we beat Flan. We are the part of the main three of Disgaea.
Oh
The thing
yeah.
is... about Marona here, is the fact that she is invincible when she's summoning phantoms. And there are a lot of them. And when you stun her, two small phantoms come from the top. I don't know if those were specifically phantoms or some other type of monster, but just two other things come from the top. And basically, it becomes a situation of, okay, now I actually have to be careful of how I hit, how I stun her, because see, they just immediately do that, but I'm fast enough that it's not an issue. She doesn't have a lot of health. And usually you can back her up against a wall very easily.
The extra bosses, they all do feel like extra bosses, like having a twist to them, rather than just being more game.
Yeah, but
Ash guy you keep crying about.
it's also a situation where it's like you have seen nothing yet with what the other things do. As the human bosses in this game are technically harder because they're vertical.
Is that the real boss, dude? I better not stick
But
around to find out.
oh, the last one.
You're alive?
Also, he's technically not alive. He's still a phantom. That's not correct.
Why am I still here, dude? Pegs don't fail me now.
Oh, Mr. Penguin!
I don't know why they didn't get Ash's voice actor here, but eh.
So that entire level, you went to that level to do nothing.
Yeah, it was more of a explorative thing. Like at least the beginning sort of makes sense, where just like you're pretty under Etna's rule. Of course, you'll probably have to go to the castle occasionally, but really is no explicit reason as to why you go to Phantom Isle. And there's especially no explicit reason as to why you're going to the next place.